Bridget is very much a save the planet type of person. She's working on like going to a protest and that sort of thing. Danny is what I would call the future DJ trope, and also I would say the cause of all the horribleness in the movie, because he's the one who discovers the book and decides that it's a good idea to play some records that you find buried under a building. Okay. Cassie's a cute kid that honestly is going to need tons of therapy. She's the little kid in this, probably maybe around 6 or 7, if not a little bit older, and is no joke going to need a lifetime's worth of therapy after the events of this movie.
Oh, goody, goody, here it comes.
Welcome to the Cinema Psycho Show.
You are interested in the unknown, the mysterious, the unexplainable. That is why you are here.
Oh my God, don't stop now!
With your hosts, Brian, John, and Elaine.
Welcome to the Cinema Psycho Show, the madhouse for film freaks and film fans of all types. I'm your host, Brian Kyneton, not joined by my fellow co-host, John Wollscroft. It's just me this week. And in this week's episode, we're going to be talking about Evil Dead Rise. It's an entry into my kind of side, I don't want to call it side show, but it's just more like, side episode when I don't have John here. And that's called What's Brian Watching? What I'm watching today is Evil Dead Rise. Now, a couple weeks ago, we had proposed doing this episode with John and put it out on Twitter. And unfortunately, at the last minute, someone decided that they really wanted to hear Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 instead. So we did that instead. But I definitely wanted to talk about Evil Dead Rise because I saw this movie in theaters and absolutely loved it. And I'm glad I got to rewatch it again for this episode because I saw a lot of things that I didn't necessarily pay attention to at the time that I had seen it in theaters. I think that's something that I think anyone who they're passionate about movies, that I say that's something you have to do, is watch it once for enjoyment purposes and then go back and watch it again and try to pick out things that maybe you're like, why is this here? And you'll start to see some of these things like whether or not the characters work and whether or not the plots that are given to you work. And I'm glad I got to watch it again because sure enough, there were some things that I saw. So Evil Dead Rise, directed by Lee Cronin, not directed by Sam Raimi. It's actually produced by Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell. Bruce Campbell, of course, is well known as Ash Williams from the original series of movies, as well as the highly underrated Ash vs. Evil Dead, one of my absolute favorite series that showed on Stars way back in the day. Film stars Alyssa Sutherland as Ellie and Lily Sullivan as Beth. The film itself, it really tries to hit you over the head with the blood and gore. And boy, oh boy, does this movie have a lot of blood and gore. Just to give you a little plot synopsis here. On a dark and stormy night, Beth comes to visit her big sister Ellie as Beth has hit a major life choice and decides that visiting her big sister she is continuously blown off for her career would be a good idea. No joke, Beth is kind of terrible in the beginning of this. She's completely aloof to what her sister's going through, and her sister, Ellie, is a tattoo artist, and I would say the cool mom of 3 kids who kind of more or less treats her kids kind of like roommates rather than children. Now, maybe that's how their dynamic works. I kind of didn't find it believable, and that's one of my points I'm going to bring up here in some of the good and bad things that I noticed. But the family is dealing with a lot of terrible shit right now. The father in the family has left, and on top of that, the building that they are living in is about to be demolished in a couple weeks. So it's kind of the worst time for Beth to show up and basically say hey, I need help, because ultimately you find out that Beth is pregnant and she kind of doesn't know what to do. And that's a major undercurrent of this particular film, is this idea of what does motherhood mean, and where do maternal instincts kind of kick in. And I don't know if I quite buy it, but I get what they're going for in this movie. Getting back to the synopsis, after an earthquake hits later that same night, the kids who are out getting pizza, who take their mom's car and go get pizza, discover a crack in the base of the building. And inside the base of the building is, of course, the Book of the Dead, as well as some really gnarly 1920s records. Danny kind of takes the book and it ends up opening it up using blood, because that's now a trope that we have to do. I saw the same sort of thing in the new Hellraiser movie, where blood on your hand kind of causes stuff to happen. And sure enough, they do it with this. Does it work? Sure. But at the same time, you know, it's kind of expected. I expected that to occur. While Danny is playing these records, you find out the records have the incantations, the kandar, and all that fun stuff that all Evil Dead movies tend to have. And that, sure enough, causes the evil to attack Ellie, whose only crime is just going in an elevator to go do some laundry. That's it. I feel so bad for Ellie in this. But she gets possessed, and it's honestly like the possession in these movies, whenever you get like the first possession in an Evil Dead movie, it's usually pretty intense. Like the first movie, you had Cheryl, who ended up getting what in essence is a tree rape, and Sam Raimi's gone on record saying like that was probably the worst thing to possibly do. And it's one of the reasons that movie got turned into a video nasty in the 80s. So like that's how she gets possessed. In this one, not as horrible, still pretty bad. Ellie gets attacked in an elevator. She basically gets like snapped and, you know, suspended by these ropes and kind of just weird, like, you know, almost like tendrils that are kind of attacking her from within the elevator. You know, basically after that, the rest of the movie is more or less building upon this. One by one, residents of the floor get ripped apart by Ellie, who's now, I would call, the demon mom. And this basically leaves Beth trying to, one, rationalize all of this stuff happening. Her sister now, you know, dead and possessed at the same time. And also, you know, trying to kill her nieces and nephew. So that's honestly a lot of what this movie is. There's not a whole lot to it. The ending of this movie is insane and bonkers. That's all I want to say. That's the best word to use for it. It's insane. You know, I was expecting this movie to have those kind of Easter egg moments you get in Evil Dead movies. I mean, the last one that came out in 2013, sure enough, had it with Mia having to lose her hand and then put it on a chainsaw. This one has those moments in there too. I know when I was in the theater seeing it, I was like, yes. I was clapping. I was like, yes, they did it. I don't want to spoil it for you because I definitely want you to watch this movie. But those Easter egg moments are there, and it all happens in a parking garage against what I'm calling the big bag deadite. Okay, what are the good things about this movie? Okay, the good, loads and loads and loads and loads of that sweet, sweet red stuff. I'm talking about blood. This movie is gory to the max. You actually have a scene in this where the elevator that Cassie and Beth are in is literally filling to the brim with blood. And they somehow survive the elevator crashing to the ground and emptying out in front of the lobby simply because of the fact that the blood was able to cushion the blow. So it is an insanely bloody film. It is a gory, gory film. Is that good? I would say yeah. Especially in the age where a lot of times these horror movies tend to pull their punches to try to get the lower rating. This is a hard R movie. Even some of the language in here is just like hard R. Okay. So it is a gory film. If you love Evil Dead movies, this is not going to leave you wanting for more blood. There's plenty of it. There is some CGI elements in this, and that is something that I think you're going to see. Did I find it distracting? Did I think that it kind of took away from it? A la like The Thing remake that came out a couple years ago? No, not really. Honestly, like I knew why those moments were there, and the movie did a good job of trying to use practical when it made sense, especially in the ending sequence where you have Beth fight the big bad deadite. There's a lot of moments when it's in shadow and you're seeing the silhouette, and we're not quite seeing the whole monster. And that's something that's really good to see. Clearly they did use moments of CGI for some things because it only made sense. But I don't think the CGI was something that took away from the movie. It didn't take me out of the experience of watching it. Speaking of some other elements of this movie, fantastic camera work and editing. That's one of the hallmarks of a really good Evil Dead movie. And it's honestly something that I didn't see a whole lot of in the 2013 one. The 2013 one felt more modern to me than anything. And that's just, the direction they went. I don't hate the 2013 one. I actually like it. But I felt that the camera work in this one very much felt like a Sam Raimi movie. It felt very much like it. Like you get the moments when the Book of the Dead is being read by the records. You're seeing these snap zooms to the speakers in Danny's room where you're getting those condor, all the incantation stuff. And that stuff is hallmark Evil Dead right there. So it's great. It's fantastic. The editing in this thing also ratchets up that tension so much. So they did a great job with the camera work and the editing. And I was expecting this to be very much just like a paint by numbers Blumhouse type of dark movie that you tend to see nowadays. It is not. They spent a lot of time on the camera work. They spent a lot of time on the editing, and you can see that. On top of that, this movie features some amazing sound design. Amazing sound design. From guttural demonic screams, from the way that the book is pronounced in the records. There's a lot of attention to those sorts of sound elements in this film. That was more or less an assault on the audience in a good way. So it was great. It was absolutely great. Sound design was fantastic. Alyssa Sutherland as the demon mom seriously stole the show. No joke. There are moments in this movie where Ellie says, honestly, some of the most vile, disgusting things that a mother could ever say to a child. And for me, I got vibes out of it that very much were in the same line as Reagan from The Exorcist. Like, no joke, it went that far. Like, and it's just like, I can't believe that this mother is saying these things to her kid and then to her sister, and just, it's insane. It's just insane. So she steals the show in every scene. No joke. I also like the neat wraparound element to this movie. So aside from this main plot that I went over, there's actually a kind of side plot that happens. You get a bit of it in the beginning, and then we kind of go back one day earlier, and that's where we get our main story. And then it kind of brings it full circle towards the end. And it was kind of nice to see it because like, when I saw this in theaters, I'm like, what the hell is this? Because it starts out, you're at a cabin in the woods, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, it's the Evil Dead. Here we are in the cabin in the woods. But then it completely like does a 180 and gets us this plot that takes place in the city. So the wraparound element was a nice touch to this. It brought it full circle. Some negative things with this movie, because not every movie is perfect, and neither is this movie. I'd say the biggest thing that I did not like about this movie was that there was not enough time spent with the family to actually give a fuck when they get possessed. Okay? Now, I know that if you watch the Evil Dead movies from before, and I'm really more or less talking about Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2, Dead by Dawn. Army of Darkness is a whole other beast. And I honestly don't, even though it's considered canon, I don't really consider it like part of those two, because those two are really like, if you're looking for what is an Evil Dead movie, it's those first two. Army of Darkness is amazing, don't get me wrong, but those first two Evil Dead movies are their own thing. But the biggest thing that I found lacking in this movie is that we go from introducing who these characters are to boom, they're possessed. And we don't really have any time, either in the beginning when we're introducing who these characters are, and towards the actual meat and potatoes of the movie when they're dealing with all these people possessed, to actually just care about them. Okay. And that's just kind of a problem with the writing, honestly. There's a lot of moments in this where you're just like, wow, that is really terrifying and horrible. But at the same time, I'm going like, I don't really care what happens to Bridget. I don't really care what happens to Danny. Cassie's a cute kid, so yeah, I don't want her to die. But like at the same time, like, you don't give me any moments to hang on to. So I almost wonder what would happen if maybe, you spent more of that time, or if it was slowed down just slightly and we had more moments where the characters were allowed to like interact outside of, oh my God, we're getting killed by our mom, you know? And that's just something that I think modern horror films tend to do. And I've really only seen it not, done with, and I mean, truth be told, it's mostly been with movies like X and Pearl, where they do spend time with giving us characters and giving us like kind of just moments where we get to see them and get to see their interactions that then in us, the audience, build kind of a reason for us to care for them. So that's a big problem with this movie. I mentioned before, I think the family dynamics between the kids, their mom and the aunt are very paper thin, and they kind of lack chemistry. You get that these people all kind of live in this apartment building, but there's no exploration of their relationships. And even when they are talking to each other, it's just kind of thin, and it just doesn't like those. There needs to be more time spent and more effort spent on bolstering the chemistry between these people. I would even say that the best chemistry you have here is between Ellie and Beth. Obviously, that's where majority of the focus is, and we get kind of the payoff of it at the end. But I don't really care about the kids in this movie, and they're just kind of there to kind of get turned to demons. Which, okay, if that's what you're there for, great. But I'm looking at this going like, well, what can we do that's maybe more? That was something that the 2013 Evil Dead also kind of had issues with, in that pretty much everyone outside of Mia was kind of disposable, So maybe that's something that the next version they do, next remake they do, is maybe a bit better. Aside from that, the maternal plot is kind of cliche. Now, what am I talking about by the maternal plot? So the whole crux of this movie is basically about Beth, who is an aunt who isn't ready to be a mom and is now forced to become a mom because her sister's trying to kill her nieces and nephews. So it's a cliche plot of someone who isn't ready having to be forced to be ready. And, oh yeah, it's because the mom is trying to kill her kids, so you've got to protect them. It's okay, and I get why it's there, but it just felt like the same tried and true. I've seen that plot before, and I would have hoped that they would have tried to do something else. Is it bad? No, it's not bad, but it's just cliche. The last point, and I saw some people on Rotten Tomatoes who really criticize this particular part of this movie. And I'm not criticizing it, but I'm just saying, for an Evil Dead movie, it would have been nice to have some comedic elements. I'm saying some. I'm not saying tons. I don't want this to be Army of Darkness. I'm just saying some comedic elements would be nice. Now, there were some people on Rotten Tomatoes who were like bashing this movie, saying, oh, well, it's not a Sam Raimi movie. It's not funny. These people have clearly never seen any of the Evil Dead movies. Okay? They maybe only saw Army of Darkness, and that's why they felt, oh yeah, there needs to be, some comedic elements. Evil Dead 1 is a die-in-the-wool like horror movie. Okay? Evil Dead 2, on the other hand, is more of a horror movie, but has those moments where you've got some comedy. The Bobby Joe and the hillbilly who comes in there, and Bobby Joe gets an eyeball in the mouth. Like that stuff is hilarious. The fact you've got Ash, who is literally laughing at the insanity around him. Those are hilarious moments. Now, do I think that this movie needs to go that far? No, I don't. There are even moments in the theater where like I was laughing at some of the horrible things just because I'm like, I can't believe that these horrible things are coming out of this woman's mouth, But that's different than actual comedic moments. I think this movie could have used some of those. I don't think they need to be crazy over the top comedic moments, but I think something to the effect of at Evil Dead 2, but like slightly below that, you don't need to go as high as that, but just slightly below that would have been nice, especially to break up some of those moments of intense terror. That's the one thing that I think people need to understand. Whenever you see comedy and horror movies, that's there to give the audience a reprieve, okay? Because a nonstop assault ends up becoming dulling after a while, okay? And that's, I think, what people need to understand is that when you have those moments of rest between scares and then you jump into it, it just heightens it even more, okay? And that's why you do see comedy in horror movies, is because it kind of lightens the load a bit for the audience and prepares them for the next time shit hits the fan, okay? So it's a great movie, okay? All in all, Evil Dead Rise is a fantastic, solid entry. I liked it enough to watch it twice, and that's not every movie that I do that with. Did I miss Bruce Campbell in this? 100%. Not gonna lie. I really, I mean, the man is the Evil Dead franchise. I don't care what you say. You know, I think in a perfect world, I would love it if they made a kind of like an MCU crossover type movie where you've got Mia, Beth, and Bruce in this, Ash in this, and they're all battling Deadites together. I think that would be hilarious. Hollywood, if you're listening, make that happen. Where can you watch this movie? You can watch this on Max, also known as HBO Max. I don't care what the fuck David Zaslav says. It's called HBO Max, but you know, whatever. What do I know? And it's also out now on DVD and Blu-ray. Okay, so go check it out. As for myself, you can find me on Twitter at Brian Connington. I also run the Psycho Show page. Be sure to like us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at Psycho Show. We are also on the TikToks for our Gen Z and millennial folk. You can find us there at Cinema Psycho Show. If you want to contact us and, you know, talk to us directly, there's a couple different ways you can do that. You can go to our Discord channel. The link for that is in the description of this episode, or you can send us an email the old-fashioned way by going to our website, cinemapsychoshow.com. And of course, subscribe to us, follow us, listen to us wherever you get your podcasts, and we will see you next time.